Have you ever wondered why a man will meet a woman of profound substance, a woman who has journeyed through her own shadows and emerged with a quiet, unshakable strength, only to subject her to a series of bewildering tests? It is one of the most painful paradoxes in modern relationships. A man claims he wants depth, authenticity, and a true partner, yet when he is faced with the reality of a spiritually awakened woman, his behavior becomes a labyrinth of inconsistency, withdrawal, and provocation. This is not a conscious strategy. It is a primal, unconscious reaction, a deep and visceral tremor that erupts from the masculine psyche when it comes face to face with a fully realized feminine soul. You feel it as a strange dissonance. One moment, he is captivated by your light, your wisdom, your inner peace. He speaks of the future, of depth, of a connection he has never known. The next, a shadow falls. He becomes distant, critical, or challenges the very essence of who you are. These are not random acts of a confused man. They are the desperate maneuvers of an ego confronting a force it cannot comprehend or control. He is not testing your worthiness. He is testing the stability of his own world, a world your very presence threatens to dismantle. The spiritually awakened woman is a living mirror, and what he sees in that reflection is not just her soul, but the stark, raw, and often terrifying landscape of his own. He sees in her the parts of himself he has long abandoned. In her compassion, he feels the echo of his own suppressed vulnerability. In her unwavering integrity, he is forced to see his own compromises. Carl Jung called this unconscious feminine aspect within a man the anima. For most of his life, his anima has been a sleeping phantom, a collection of ideals, fantasies, and fears projected onto women who could not challenge him. He has sought partners who were manageable, predictable, women who would fit neatly into the empty spaces of his life without demanding that he grow. But the awakened woman is not an empty space. She is a universe. She doesn't just fill a void, she presents him with a door to his own inner cosmos, a place he has been too afraid to enter alone. His tests are his trembling hand on the doorknob of that door. He pushes you away to see if his own soul, reflected in you, is worth chasing. He critiques your strength to see if his own buried power is truly real. This is the forbidden truth. His provocations are a frantic, unconscious dialogue with his own undeveloped soul. He is not asking, "Are you good enough for me?" He is screaming into the abyss of his own psyche, "Am I brave enough for you? Am I whole enough to stand beside a woman who is already whole?" The tragedy is that you, the woman, experience this profound internal battle as a personal rejection, a questioning of your own value, when you were never the one on trial. The dynamic is rooted in the primal fear of the ego. The ego is the great manager of our lives. It builds walls, creates rules, and establishes a known identity to protect us from the chaos of the unknown. The spiritually awakened woman is the embodiment of that chaos. She does not operate from a rigid set of egoic rules but from a fluid, intuitive connection to her deeper self, her soul. Her peace is not derived from external validation or control, which are the primary currencies of the ego. Her strength comes from surrender, from embracing the unknown, from her willingness to descend into her own darkness and bring back light. This serene power is profoundly destabilizing to the man living primarily from his ego. His entire reality is built on a foundation she has proven to be unnecessary. His ego panics. It perceives her as a threat to its very existence. If she can be whole without the armor he wears, then what does that say about the necessity of his own defenses? If she can find peace in stillness, what does that say about his relentless chase for success and status? You become an unwilling catalyst for an existential crisis he was not prepared to face. So, the ego deploys its most trusted weapons: doubt, distance, and destabilization. It whispers to him, "She is too much. She is too intense. Find a flaw. Make her smaller. Bring her back down to a level you can manage. The tests are a desperate attempt to prove that her enlightenment is a fraud, that her peace is a performance, so he can retreat to the comfort of his own limited worldview. This is where the ancient wisdom of Stoicism offers not just a shield, but a sword of clarity. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that the chief task in life is to separate what is within our control from what is not. A man's internal chaos, his ego's panic, his unconscious projections, these are storms that rage entirely outside of your inner citadel. You cannot calm his seas. You cannot fight his phantom fears. To even try is to surrender your own peace, to hand over the keys of your emotional state to a man who is at war with himself. His tests are not your emergency. They are an invitation, not to prove your worth to him, but to demonstrate your sovereignty to yourself. When he withdraws his affection, it is not a referendum on your desirability. It is a test of your attachment. Can you remain whole when a source of external validation disappears? Do you crumble, or do you stand firm in the unshakable knowledge of your own intrinsic value? This is a moment to practice the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself daily to be unperturbed by the actions of others. The man's retreat is his strategy, born of his fear. Your centeredness is your practice, born of your wisdom. You observe his withdrawal not with anxiety, but with a quiet, discerning curiosity. You see it for what it is, a signal of his inner state, not a verdict on your soul. His silence is simply a space, and you get to choose what fills it, your fear or your freedom. Then comes the test of criticism. It is often subtle, a small jab at your passions, a questioning of your path, a cynical remark about your spiritual beliefs. This is a probe sent from his ego to find a crack in your foundation. The unconscious hope is that you will become defensive, that you will scramble to justify your existence, that you will tether your self-worth to his approval of your life's choices. Engaging in this battle is to lose immediately. The awakened woman does not defend her soul. She simply inhabits it. She understands that a man who needs to diminish her light is a man living in darkness. Your response is not to argue, but to embody the truth of your path with even greater certainty. This is the Stoic principle of living according to nature, your own authentic nature. His criticism is merely noise from the outside world. It cannot touch the sanctum of your inner truth unless you allow it entry. You do not need his validation to know that your path is valid. You do not need his belief to believe in yourself. When you meet his skepticism with a calm, unwavering self-possession, you are not just passing his test. You are demonstrating a form of power his ego has never encountered, the power of a woman who is her own source of certainty. He may not understand it, but he will never forget it. One of the most potent tests is the projection of his own shadow. The parts of himself that he denies, his insecurity, his untrustworthiness, his own unhealed trauma, he will unconsciously project onto you. If he carries a deep fear of abandonment, he will accuse you of being distant. If he is incapable of true intimacy, he will call you emotionally unavailable. He will create a narrative in which you are the source of the problem because the alternative, looking at his own reflection, is simply too painful. This is perhaps the most disorienting test of all, because it feels so deeply unjust. You are being blamed for the very wounds he refuses to heal. This is a crucible for your own shadow work. To withstand this psychic assault, you must be intimately familiar with your own darkness. You must know your own flaws, your own triggers, and your own wounds so completely that when he hurls a false accusation, it finds no place to stick. You can calmly and clearly see, that is not mine to carry. A woman who has not done her inner work will absorb these projections. She will question herself, internalize the blame, and desperately try to fix a problem that was never hers. But the woman who has journeyed inward understands the mechanics of projection. She sees his accusations not as a reflection of her reality, but as a map of his pain. It is a moment of profound, albeit painful, clarity. It is through this lens that his hot and cold behavior begins to make sense. The moments of intense connection, when he pulls you close, are moments when his soul, his anima, breaks through the ego's defenses. In those moments, he is not just connecting with you, he is connecting with the most beautiful, neglected part of himself. He feels a sense of homecoming, of wholeness, that is both intoxicating and terrifying. But the ego cannot tolerate this state of surrender for long. It reasserts control by creating distance, by manufacturing doubt, by shutting down the very connection his soul craves. This is the tragic push and pull you experience. You are caught in the crossfire of his internal war between ego and soul. To personalize this behavior is the greatest mistake. To believe his withdrawal is a true measure of your connection is to misunderstand the battle being waged. The Stoic task here is to observe this pattern without being swept away by it. See it as the tide, rising and falling according to a celestial pull that has nothing to do with the shore. You are the shore. Your job is to remain constant, to know your own landscape. When the tide of his affection is in, you can enjoy the connection without clinging to it. When the tide goes out, you can enjoy the vastness of your own solitude without feeling abandoned. Your emotional stability becomes your anchor in the storm of his inconsistency. This entire dynamic is a catalyst for the Jungian process of individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming whole, of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of ourselves to become a complete, self-realized individual. While he is unconsciously battling his own demons, he is, in a strange way, offering you a profound spiritual opportunity. Each test he presents is a chance for you to strengthen your own core, to define your boundaries, and to anchor yourself more deeply in your own truth. He forces you to answer the most critical questions: where do I end and where does he begin? What is my unshakable value, independent of his opinion? What am I willing to tolerate, and what is my non-negotiable standard for peace? This is not a journey you take for him. You do not become stronger to win his approval. You become stronger because his instability reveals the absolute necessity of your own sovereignty. He becomes an unwitting spiritual teacher, a harsh guru whose chaotic energy forces you into a state of unwavering self-possession. It is a painful alchemy, transmuting the poison of his confusion into the medicine of your clarity. You begin to realize that the ultimate goal of this connection may not have been to build a life with him, but to use the friction of the dynamic to polish the mirror of your own soul until it reflects nothing but your own brilliant, unwavering light. The man often tests a woman's boundaries to see if she possesses a strong sense of self. A woman who has not cultivated her own self-worth will bend and break her own rules to keep him. She will tolerate disrespect, accept excuses, and rationalize his poor behavior because her fear of losing him is greater than her love for herself. The awakened woman understands that her boundaries are not walls to keep others out. They are sacred fences to protect the garden of her inner peace. They are a declaration of self-respect. When she calmly and firmly upholds a boundary, she is not punishing him. She is teaching him how she must be treated. How you respond to this test is critical. Do you state your boundary and then apologize for it? Do you allow him to debate its validity? Or do you state it as a simple fact of your reality, with no anger and no negotiation? The latter is the path of the sovereign woman. She might say, I am not available for last-minute plans, or I don't continue conversations when the tone becomes disrespectful. There is no emotional charge, only a statement of what is acceptable within her world. The man who is truly seeking growth will respect this. He may be momentarily challenged, but he will recognize the strength it represents. The man who is merely looking for a space to enact his chaos will protest, call you rigid or difficult, and attempt to dismantle the fence. This reaction is a gift. It is the clearest sign that he is not ready to meet you in a place of mutual respect. Another test is the challenge to your feminine radiance. A man who is insecure in his own masculinity can be threatened by a woman who is fully embodied in her feminine essence, her joy, her creativity, her emotional expression, her sensuality. He may subtly mock your joy, dismiss your creative pursuits as trivial, or become uncomfortable with your emotional depth. This is a desperate attempt to dim your light because it illuminates his own undeveloped inner world. He is trying to pull you out of your feminine flow and into the masculine world of logic, structure, and control where he feels more comfortable. The temptation is to shrink, to become less vibrant, to moderate your joy so as not to intimidate him. This is a betrayal of your own soul. The empowered response is to shine even more brightly. Laugh louder. Dance with more freedom. Speak your emotional truth with more courage. Your radiance is not an attack on his masculinity, it is a gift to the world. A secure man, a man who has done his own work, will be drawn to your light like a moth to a flame. He will not want to contain it, he will want to bask in it. He will see your joy not as a threat, but as an invitation for his own soul to come out and play. By refusing to dim your light, you create a powerful filter. Only the men who are strong enough to celebrate your brilliance will be able to remain in your orbit. At its core, all of this is a confrontation with freedom. The spiritually awakened woman is fundamentally free. She has freed herself from the need for external validation. She has freed herself from the prison of past trauma. She has freed herself from societal expectations of what a woman should be. This freedom is magnetic, but it is also terrifying to a person who is still in chains. Your inner liberation is a constant, silent reminder of his own imprisonment. He is bound by his ego, his fears, his conditioning. He looks at you, and he sees what is possible, which immediately casts a harsh light on the life he is actually living. His tests are often an unconscious attempt to see if your freedom is real. Can it be broken? Can it be shaken? If he can provoke you into a state of anxiety, jealousy, or neediness, he proves to himself that your freedom was an illusion. This validates his own choice to remain in his comfortable cage. It allows him to think, see? She is just like everyone else. That kind of freedom isn't real. It's safer to stay where I am. But when you meet his provocations with the calm, centered grace of a truly free spirit, you do not give him that satisfaction. You hold the line, not just for yourself, but as a testament to the truth that liberation is possible. You become a lighthouse, showing him the way to shore, but you cannot force him to turn his ship. Consider the wisdom of Seneca, who wrote extensively on the nature of anger and emotional disturbance. He argued that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgment about events. A man's inconsistent text messages are not, in themselves, a source of suffering. The suffering comes from the story you attach to them. He is losing interest. I am not important. I did something wrong. The awakened woman learns to see the event without the story. She sees the text for what it is, a piece of data. She sees his withdrawal for what it is, information about his current emotional state. She strips the event of its power to harm her by refusing to inject it with a narrative of her own lack. This practice of non-judgmental observation is a superpower. When he pulls away, you observe it. You do not immediately react. You sit with the space and consult your own inner wisdom. You ask not, what does this mean about me, but rather, what does this behavior reveal about him, and how does that information serve me? This shift in perspective is monumental. It moves you from the position of a victim of his behavior to the position of a discerning observer of human nature. You are no longer on the receiving end of his tests. You are the scientist studying the results, using the data to make empowered decisions about where you invest your precious energy. Your peace is no longer contingent on his actions, but is rooted in the quality of your own perceptions. This is why shadow work is not an option, but a necessity for the woman who wishes to navigate these dynamics. Your unhealed wounds are the hooks upon which his projections will always catch. If you have an unhealed abandonment wound, his withdrawal will trigger a primal terror within you. If you have an unhealed wound of not being good enough, his criticism will feel like a fatal blow. His tests are so effective precisely because they are designed, unconsciously, to target the weakest points in your psychological armor. He is instinctively drawn to probe the places where you are not yet whole. But when you choose to descend into your own underworld, to meet your own demons, to heal your own trauma, you remove those hooks. You fill those inner voids with self-love and radical acceptance. When he probes for an abandonment wound, he finds nothing but the solid ground of a woman who knows she will never abandon herself. When he searches for the insecurity of not being enough, he finds only the quiet confidence of a woman who has validated herself from within. You alchemize your triggers. They cease to be buttons he can push to control you and instead become signals that alert you to his own inner state. You see his behavior not as an attack, but as a reflection of the work he still has to do. Ultimately, a man tests a spiritually awakened woman because she represents his final frontier. She is the embodiment of the soul, of meaning, of a life lived beyond the superficial. To be with her is to accept an invitation to his own evolution. This is the highest stakes journey a man can take. It requires him to dismantle his ego, confront his shadows, and surrender to a power greater than his own control. It is a call to spiritual manhood. The tests are his hesitation at the threshold. They are the voice of his fear asking, "Am I ready to die to my old self to be reborn into something true?" Many men are not. They will approach the threshold, feel the intense heat of the transformative fire, and retreat to the safety of a more conventional, less demanding connection. This is not a failure on your part. It is a choice on his. It is a reflection of his readiness, not your worth. The awakened woman understands this without bitterness. She holds a space of compassion for his journey but does not put her own life on hold waiting for him to become brave. She knows that her path is to continue evolving, to continue radiating her truth, regardless of who is or is not able to walk beside her. Her purpose is not to save him, but to save herself, and in doing so, to become a beacon for what is possible. The Stoic concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate, is the final piece of this puzzle. It is the practice of embracing everything that happens, not just tolerating it, but loving it as a necessary part of your path. You learn to love his tests, not because they feel good, but because you recognize their purpose in your own unfolding. You see the pain of his inconsistency as the force that taught you to be your own anchor. You see the sting of his criticism as the pressure that solidified your own self-belief. You see the confusion of his projections as the catalyst that drove you to complete your own shadow work. He was not the destination, he was the journey. He was not the prize, he was the training ground. With this realization, all resentment dissolves. All lingering questions of why fade away. There is only a profound sense of gratitude for the role he played, however unconsciously, in your own spiritual expansion. You are not defined by his inability to choose you, you are defined by your ability to choose yourself, over and over again. You see that every interaction was perfectly designed to lead you back to the only source of love and validation that will ever truly satisfy, the infinite wellspring within your own soul. You have passed the ultimate test, the one you set for yourself. This is the rebirth. It is a quiet, internal shift that changes everything. You no longer enter relationships with a sense of hopeful anxiety, wondering if you will be enough. You enter with a sense of sovereign curiosity, wondering if this connection will align with the beautiful life you have already built for yourself. You cease to be a candidate auditioning for a role in his life and become the director of your own magnificent story. The need for a man to pass or fail your tests dissolves because the entire framework of testing becomes irrelevant. You are no longer looking for a man to complete you, but for a partner whose own wholeness resonates with yours. Your energy becomes the filter. Your peace becomes the boundary. Your joy becomes the standard. Men who are operating from a place of ego, fear, and unresolved trauma will find your energetic frequency to be uncomfortable, even jarring. They will naturally fall away, not because you rejected them, but because they cannot thrive in the high-altitude atmosphere of your self-respect. The men who are drawn to you, who stay, are the ones who have done or are actively doing their own inner work. They are not looking for a woman to test. They are looking for a woman to admire, to learn from, and to build with. They are not intimidated by your light. They are inspired by it. The awakened woman moves through the world with a different kind of power. It is not the power of seduction or manipulation. It is the unshakable power of presence. Her cup is already full. She is not seeking love out of a sense of lack, but is overflowing with it, ready to share with someone who is worthy of receiving it. She has alchemized her pain into wisdom, her loneliness into a deep and joyful solitude, her questions into an embodied knowing. She understands that the man who tests her is simply showing her that he is not yet her equal. He is not a villain, he is just a character from a previous chapter of her story. She closes that chapter with grace, with compassion, and without a single backward glance. The tests were never about her. They were always a reflection of his own inner battle, a projection of his fears and his potential. But in withstanding them, in using them as a crucible for her own growth, she transcends the game entirely. She is no longer a participant in the drama of the masculine ego. She has graduated. She has learned the forbidden truth. The tests were a distraction, and the real prize was never his approval. It was her own unshakable, sovereign, and magnificent soul. She stands now not as a woman who survived a man's tests, but as a woman who has become the architect of her own peace, the guardian of her own heart. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.